Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
We're about to dive deep into something really fundamental, something most of us probably, well, take for granted, seeds.
Hmm.
Yeah, those, tiny packages of potential that quite literally hold the future of our food.
Absolutely critical.
So this deep dive is all about the commercial seed market. We're pulling back the curtain based on sources you shared with us, specifically a really fascinating report from Cognitive Market Research.
Right.
Our mission today is to really get our heads around the immense scale of this industry, figure out who the absolute giants are,
The big players, yeah.
pinpoint those agile challengers kind of snapping at their heels, and explore what it really takes to succeed in this market right now,
Yeah.
especially, with these massive global challenges feeding billions more people, climate change.
And what's really striking here is that, while seeds themselves are ancient, this business, it's anything but static. It's actually undergoing incredibly rapid technology-driven growth.
Exactly. And maybe we should just hit you with the numbers early on, because they are pretty surprising. The scale, the growth.
Yeah, the trajectory is quite something.
We've taken your sources, looked through them, and we're basically going to walk you through what we think is most important to understand.
Okay.
So let's start with that scale. Forget thinking of this as just like farmers buying a few packets of seeds. According to this research, the commercial seed business is just enormous and getting bigger fast.
That's right. The report puts the global market size at, get this, USD 86,821.8 million in 2024.
Wow. 86 billion.
Yeah. But it's the projection that's the real story here.
Okay, so what's the outlook? Where's it headed?
It's projected to nearly double. They expect it to reach USD 170,474.7 million by 2032.
Whoa, okay. Doubling in what, 8 years?
Which translates to a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR of 8.80%.
Wait, 8.8% growth for seeds. That feels incredibly high for something so, fundamental. What on earth is driving that kind of expansion?
It is significant, yeah. And the report points to several key drivers. You mentioned feeding more people, that's the obvious one, growing global food demand.
Sure.
But it's also really driven by significant advancements in seed technologies. We're seeing much wider adoption of varieties specifically bred for, high yields and resistance to pests and diseases.
So seeds that produce more and maybe need fewer inputs like pesticides. Makes sense.
Exactly. Plus, there's increasing investment flowing into agricultural innovation generally and precision farming, specifically tech that helps farmers get the absolute most out of every single seed, every acre. And, supportive government policies aimed at boosting productivity and ensuring food security, those play a big role globally, too.
And isn't there that fundamental challenge woven into this, like more people, but the amount of good farmland isn't really increasing?
Absolutely. That's a huge pressure. The rising global population paired with, unfortunately, decreasing arable land per capita means we just have to become vastly more efficient.
Right.
That pressure directly drives the demand for these advanced commercial seeds. It's why you're seeing such a surge in demand for genetically modified, or GM, and hybrid seeds, particularly for the big commodity crops. Corn, soybean, cotton, canola, they offer those needed yield boosts and resilience traits.
Okay, so the big crops are central, but is it only about maximizing yield, or are there other trends showing up in the demand?
Yeah, good question. The report also notes the rising popularity of organic and specialty crops, particularly in developed markets. So that represents a different kind of opportunity, driving demand for specialized, often non-GM varieties.
It really highlights how something as foundational as a seed is sitting right at the core of this massive, complex, and, technologically dynamic global business. It's not just dirt and water anymore, is it?
Not at all. It really shows how critical innovation is, even at this basic level of the food system, if we're going to address today's big challenges.
Right. Speaking of innovation and complexity, how do companies actually compete in this space? If you're looking at this market, what makes a leader? What criteria does the research use?
Well, cognitive market research compares companies based on several key factors. It starts, fundamentally, with the performance of the seed itself, right?
In that sense.
Its yield potential, how well it resists pests and diseases, its adaptability to different soil types, different climates. A seed has to actually deliver in the field.
Right. The product's got to be good. What about the company making it? Their capabilities?
Yeah, research and development capabilities are huge. Are they actually investing in the science to create the next breakthrough? Product portfolio diversity matters too, offering seeds for a wide range of crops and uses.
Okay.
And as you probably guess, geographic presence is vital. Having seeds suited to all sorts of different agroclimatic conditions worldwide, and importantly, the network to get them there.
And there was one more. Strong agronomic support. What does that actually involve?
That basically means helping farmers succeed after they buy the seed. Providing expertise, advice, support to make sure they get the best possible outcome from those seeds.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. How do these companies actually ensure that consistent, high-level seed quality and performance across millions of acres globally? The report points to specific technologies.
Right. This is where the science really comes in. Delivering that consistent quality, building in traits like disease resistance or, say, drought tolerance that relies heavily on advanced breeding technologies. The report specifically names techniques like CRISPR gene editing,
Okay.
marker-assisted selection, and transgenic traits.
Okay, let's maybe just briefly unpack those for anyone who isn't deep in the ag biotech weeds. What's the difference, roughly, and why are they such game changers?
Good point. Think of it maybe this way. Traditional breeding is like, well, carefully selecting parents to cross and then hoping the best traits show up in the kids over many, many generations.
Right, slow process.
Very. Now, marker-assisted selection, that speeds things up immensely. It uses genetic markers, like little flags in the DNA, to identify desirable genes in young plants, so breeders can select the right ones much, much faster.
So picking winners early on.
Exactly. Now, transgenic traits, that involves introducing a specific gene, often from another organism entirely, to give the plant a completely new trait it didn't have before, like resistance to a certain pest or herbicide. That was the sort of first wave of GM seeds many people are familiar with.
Okay, and CRISPR gene editing, that feels newer, more talked about recently.
CRISPR is often described like a molecular find and replace tool for DNA. It allows for much more precise changes within a plant's existing genetic code, often without introducing foreign genes at all.
More like editing than adding.
Precisely. You can fine-tune traits, or maybe remove undesirable ones with unprecedented accuracy and speed. The report highlights these technologies, CRISPR, marker-assisted selection, transgenics, as key differentiators because they let companies develop seeds with very specific, predictable performance characteristics much more efficiently than before.
And beyond just the seed itself, the report talks about value-added services. What else are these leading companies offering farmers?
Yeah, it's about bundling the seed with intelligence and support. That can include customized seed recommendations based on a farmer's specific field conditions, digital farming platforms that use data to help manage the crops.
Data-driven farming.
Exactly. And even sustainability-driven crop solutions, helping farmers meet environmental goals.
And the major players, they're clearly investing heavily in all of this, right? The tech, the services.
Oh, absolutely. Companies like Bayer CropScience, Corteva Agriscience, Syngenta Group, they are pouring resources into developing these next-generation seeds, both for conventional farming and increasingly for organic systems, too. And they're building out these digital platforms and support services alongside them.
And strategically, how are they positioning themselves globally? Is it just about selling seeds everywhere, or is there more to it?
The report points to specific strategic approaches. Things like expanding deliberately into high-growth emerging economies, forming partnerships with local agribusinesses, which is often crucial for navigating regional complexities,
Right, local know-how.
and aligning their products and services with global initiatives around things like climate-smart agriculture.
This really raises a big question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In a market that's this technologically dynamic, driven by huge global needs and these scientific breakthroughs, how do these, handful of massive companies manage to stay on top year after year?
It certainly seems like a constant race. Yeah, constant innovation is key.
Okay, well, let's meet those top dominant players that the research identified. There are 5 companies that, according to the report, collectively hold a pretty significant chunk of this market.
Right. These 5 are the clear leaders based on the data.
And right at the top, with a substantial 18.4% market share, we have Bayer Group. What does the report highlight about their strategy? How do they hold that top spot?
Well, Bayer's leadership stems primarily from their vast portfolio. They cover major global crops: corn, soybean, cotton, canola, vegetables. Their crop science division, which of course includes the legacy of Monsanto, is their engine here.
Right.
The report notes their deep commitment to agricultural innovation, backed by massive R&D infrastructure and real expertise in biotechnology and trait development. They leverage digital farming tools, offer integrated solutions, plus they have an enormous global footprint and, crucially, strong regulatory expertise. Getting new seed tech approved in diverse markets is a huge undertaking.
Makes sense. Coming in second, Corteva, with 16.4%. What's their story?
Corteva is interesting because it's a company specifically dedicated only to agriculture, formed from that big merger of Dow AgriSciences and DuPont Pioneer businesses.
Ah, yeah. Pure play ag company.
Exactly. They offer a really comprehensive range of seeds, corn, soybeans, sunflower, rice, other crops too. The report emphasizes their heavy investment in cutting-edge genomics, CRISPR technology, and advanced hybrid breeding, the goal. Developing varieties with superior yield, better pest resistance, and adaptability to climate stress.
Okay.
Their Pioneer brand is particularly strong, very recognized globally, especially in key markets like the US, Brazil, India. Corteva also focuses heavily on sustainability and farmer productivity, backing it up with agronomic expertise and field-level services. They aim for that integrated approach, combining seed genetics, crop protection, and digital tools.
Third is Syngenta Group, holding 10.7%.
Syngenta has a very robust seed development pipeline, again covering major field crops and vegetables. The report notes they're backed by ChemChina, which supports their expanding global footprint and their investments in things like trait development and hybrid research across many crops.
Right.
They have proprietary brands like NK Seeds and focus on developing region-specific hybrids. Their operations are strong, globally big presence in Asia-Pacific, Europe, Latin America, supported by extensive distribution networks and, importantly, localized R&D. A key focus highlighted in the report is their emphasis on climate-smart agriculture, developing seeds resilient to drought, pests, changing weather patterns. They also push integrated solutions.
Okay. Next up, KWS SA8 SE KGAA with 8.5%. Bit of a different name there.
Yeah, KWS is a German-based company with a very long history, over 165 years of legacy, specifically in seed breeding. The report highlights their excellence and focus on specific crops where they're historically strong, things like sugar beet, corn, cereals, oilseed rape. They focus on developing high-performance cultivars with strong genetic diversity. They emphasize sustainability and productivity. While they have a very strong base in Europe, they're also growing operations in the Americas and Asia. The report mentions their proprietary breeding programs, seed treatment technologies, digital farming tools, and their model of working very closely with farmers. Their independence, being solely focused on seed development, is noted as a key characteristic.
And rounding out the top five is Vilmorin Mikado with 7.6%.
Right. Vilmorin Mikado is part of the larger Limagrain Group, which is actually an agricultural cooperative based in France. They specialize particularly in vegetable seeds, but also field crops.
Interesting, a cooperative structure.
Yeah. The report points to their rich breeding heritage and an incredibly diverse portfolio covering over 80 vegetable species. They link this directly to their commitment to global food security through genetic innovation. Strong presence in Asia-Pacific and Europe. They focus on developing hybrids with traits like disease resistance and improved shelf life for both open field and greenhouse farming.
Okay.
And the report emphasizes their close relationships with growers, distributors, the whole supply chain, really, which reflects that agricultural cooperative model, prioritizing innovation, sustainability, and being very customer-centric.
So those five hold a huge slice of the pie. But as you mentioned earlier, the report also identifies companies that are actively challenging this established hierarchy. The disruptors, maybe?
Ah, yes, the ones looking to shake things up a bit. Who does this research point to as potential threats or maybe significant challengers on the rise?
Yeah, who's keeping the big guys on their toes?
The report names a group of companies gaining ground. Rijkswaan. Let me get the full name. Rijkswaan Zaadteelt and Zaadhandel BV. Cicada Seed America, Taki & Co., LTD, Advana Seeds, and also Dow.
Okay, so why are they considered threats? Are they just like smaller versions of the big five?
Not really, no. The report suggests they're challenging the dominance by leveraging more focused innovation, building up really strong regional presences, and executing smart, strategic global expansion, often in specific niches where they can perhaps be more agile than the giants.
Okay, let's dig into some examples from the report. Rijkswaan, how are they challenging? What's their angle?
Rijkswaan, they're known specifically for very high-quality vegetable seeds. The report notes their strength comes from robust R&D, but it's tightly linked to close collaboration with growers and the broader food supply chain.
Ah, customer focus.
Very much so. This customer-centric approach helps them develop varieties that meet very specific market needs. They actually have a significant global presence in over 100 countries and put a strong emphasis on breeding for disease resistance and developing climate-resilient vegetable varieties.
Cicada Seed America, what's their strength?
Well, Cicada Seed America, as the name suggests, has a really strong focus in the Americas. They work on both vegetable and ornamental seeds. The report highlights their investment in biotechnology and breeding for disease resistance. Their well-established distribution network gives them a kind of regional dominance that lets them compete effectively in specific segments there.
And Taki & Co.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds Japanese.
It is, based in Japan. Taki & Co. has a long heritage in seed development. They did pioneering work, particularly in hybrid seeds, way back. The report points to their continued investments in genetics and variety improvement, giving them a technological edge, especially in vegetable crops. They have global breeding centers and collaborations with research institutions, which enhances their ability to deliver solutions adapted to local conditions worldwide.
Okay, Advanta Seeds.
Advanta Seeds is part of the UPL Group, a larger agricultural inputs company. The report describes them as having a strong portfolio in both field and vegetable seeds, but interestingly, they've built significant presence and strength, particularly in emerging economies.
Different geographic focus, maybe.
Exactly. Their focus is often on hybrid, high-yielding varieties, specifically tailored to regional needs in places like Asia, Africa, Latin America. They often combine this with competitive pricing and a very farmer-centric approach to build loyalty in those markets.
And finally, Dow. We heard their name mentioned in the Corteva history.
Right, well, Dow still maintains a strategically positioned seed division separate from the Corteva formation. The report notes they have integrated R&D and access to proprietary biotechnologies, allowing them to develop genetically advanced varieties, particularly in major row crops like corn and soybeans. Their innovation pipeline and the ability to leverage synergies from their broader agrochemical business provides a distinct competitive advantage.
So if we try to connect the dots here, these companies aren't necessarily trying to be everything to everyone like a Bayer might.
Exactly. They're using their specific strengths, whether it's a crop focus like vegetables for Rixuan, a strong regional base like Cicada in the Americas, or heritage and technology like Taki to carve out niches and really redefine the competitive dynamics in those specific areas. They use agility.
That leads perfectly into the next point I saw in the research. If you weren't one of the giants, or even one of these established challengers yet, say you're a new player or a smaller company looking to grow, how could you actually thrive in this market? What's the playbook, according to this report?
Yeah, that's a key question. The core message from the research is really clear. Success for new entrants and smaller players hinges on differentiation.
Okay.
And that differentiation needs to come primarily through, well, three things: technology, a focused regional strategy, and increasingly sustainability.
Okay, differentiation through tech, region, and sustainability. Let's break that down a bit. How does technology play the biggest role for a newcomer?
Well, the crucial pathway, according to the report, is developing high-yielding, climate-resilient seed varieties that are specifically tailored to local agronomic challenges.
Right, solving specific problems.
Exactly. The report highlights innovations like drought-tolerant seeds, pest-resistant ones, or maybe nutrient-enriched varieties using hybrid or GM techniques, basically. Varieties that directly solve problems farmers are actually facing in a specific area.
So not just generic high yield, but targeted solutions. And that means investing in the labs, right, in the science.
Absolutely. It requires significant investment in biotechnology. Those precision breeding techniques we talked about earlier, like CRISPR, and trait stacking, which is combining multiple desirable traits into one single seed.
Okay.
The report also stresses the value of forming R&D partnerships, maybe with universities or tech institutes, to accelerate that innovation. The goal is truly differentiated products that perform better and meet all the necessary regulatory hurdles.
What about the geography piece? Should a new player try to go everywhere at once or be more focused?
The report definitely suggests a strategic geographic focus is smarter for smaller players. It points specifically to high-growth markets like Asia-Pacific, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Latin America.
And why those regions specifically?
Well, because these regions generally have rapidly rising food demand, pretty pressing food security concerns, and also evolving diets, all of which creates significant opportunities for innovative, locally adapted seeds. There's a real need.
And how do you actually navigate entering those markets? It can be complex, right? Culturally,
Yeah.
regulatorily.
Yeah, and the report says local partnerships are absolutely key. Collaborating with farmer cooperatives, maybe leveraging government extension services, or partnering with established local agri-input distributors that can provide invaluable market access, help navigate local rules, and crucially, build trust with farming communities. Farmers are often, understandably, wary of new, unproven players.
That makes sense. The report also mentioned digital agriculture and traceability tools as part of the strategy for newcomers. How do those fit in?
It's about adding value beyond just the physical seed. Bundling seeds with digital services can be a powerful differentiator.
Like what kind of services?
Oh, it could be offering digital advisory services on planting times or crop management, maybe providing access to crop monitoring apps through smartphones, or even using something like blockchain for provenance tracking, showing the farmer exactly where their seed came from, its history.
And how does that help the farmer and, I guess, the seed company?
Well, for the farmer, these tools can help maximize their yield and potentially reduce costs through better, more informed management. For the seed company, it builds a deeper relationship, fosters brand loyalty, and it creates a valuable data stream for improving future products and services.
Okay, and finally, sustainability. Is that still just a nice to have, or is it becoming central to competing?
According to this research, it's becoming absolutely essential. It needs to be woven into both product development and the go-to-market strategy. Offering seeds that actively support low-input farming or regenerative agriculture practices, or maybe help reduce carbon emissions from farming that isn't just good PR anymore. It's increasingly demanded by regulators, by food companies further up the supply chain, and by consumers, too.
Right.
Things like getting certifications or eco-labels for your sustainable seeds can significantly boost marketability, especially for a new player trying to stand out.
Okay, so if you pull all that together, what does it mean for a new player trying to break in? What's the summary?
Success really seems to come from being technologically advanced, but with solutions tailored to specific local needs,
Sure.
being strategically focused on the right high-growth regions, being integrated with digital tools to genuinely support farmers, and fundamentally, being genuinely committed to environmental responsibility throughout their entire process. It's a tall order, but that's the path.
Right. So bringing it all together then, based on the conclusion of this research, the commercial seed market is clearly on a very strong growth trajectory. No doubt about that.
Yes, absolutely. Driven by that fundamental need for increased productivity to feed a growing world, by evolving dietary trends, and critically, by the urgent need for farming solutions that can adapt to and ideally mitigate climate change impacts.
And while those established leaders, Bayer, Corteva, Syngenta, they dominate through their sheer scale, their tech platforms, global supply chains, deep farmer networks.
Yeah, they have huge advantages there. But the challenges we discussed, Rick Swan, Cicada, Taki, Advanciseeds, Dow, they're actively redefining the competitive dynamics. They're using agility, targeted innovation, smart regional strategies to create significant niches and break into areas previously controlled by the giants. It shows it can be done.
So the market isn't just favoring big necessarily, it's favoring smart and responsive. It seems to heavily reward companies that can deliver seeds that are high-performing, adaptable to specific, often challenging local conditions, and increasingly environmentally responsible.
Precisely. And the report really underscores the vital role this whole commercial seed market plays. It's not just a multi-billion-dollar business, it's absolutely fundamental to shaping the future of global food security, especially as populations keep growing and climate change keeps accelerating.
And finally, the conclusion I saw from the research is that collaboration is going to be absolutely critical going forward.
Yeah, that came through strongly. It's going to take real interaction and cooperation between governments, research bodies, the big legacy players, and these disruptive entrants. Everyone kind of working together will be necessary for agriculture to remain productive, but also inclusive and truly sustainable in the decades ahead.
So that's our deep dive into the commercial seed market, from its immense size and the powerful factors driving its growth, to the dominant players, those innovative challengers, and the clear strategies the research identifies for new innovators looking to succeed.
It really is a market operating at this fascinating intersection, isn't it? Fundamental biology, cutting-edge technology, global economics, and, well, the most pressing challenges facing humanity right now, all wrapped up in a seed.
Exactly. Maybe here's a final thought to leave you with. Consider how these tiny seeds, shaped by incredibly advanced breeding technologies and powerful global market forces, hold enormous power, not just over what food ends up on our plates, but fundamentally how we as a species live and survive in a rapidly changing world.
Yeah.
What does that immense potential, that concentration of technology, mean for the farmers who plant them? And maybe what does it mean for the choices we make as consumers about the kind of food system we ultimately want to support? Something to chew on.